Good evening. This is a Chicago Computer Society Linux SIG meeting for the month of July, and everyone is welcome to start with Q&A for questions, answers, opinions, insights, something newsworthy about Linux. Who wants to start? Nobody knows anything.
Well, you did mention changing the contrast. So
I didn't say
where
contrast. I said brightness.
brightness, how would I find the
You
brightness?
got to go into settings.
Okay.
Go down to hardware.
And maybe we should, for the recording purpose, make note that Dennis has just set up his Linux computer, and we are going over a few of the basics.
He didn't.
Yeah,
He didn't set it up.
I'm just using it for the very first time today. So here I'm into settings, and
I'm trying to remember where it's at too.
desktop maybe?
I don't think it was desktop.
Actions, desktop, general. I'll hit
It's under power management. It
Oh.
says, but I don't see brightness there. So no, it's not doing that. So let's see.
Yeah, I forget where it's at because I don't have to mess with it very often.
Oh, here's one. When I clicked on actions, one of the things here on actions says, oh, you're saying it backwards. Okay. Display setting. Change the resolution?
No, you don't want to do
Resolution
that.
is how dense of a resolution your monitor supports, such as 1080p,
Okay.
1234 by 1068, things like that.
Okay. Okay. Well, I don't want to slow things down. I can just kind of keep browsing here and see what I find. If anybody else has another question or anything. Panel. I don't know what panel means. Look at that. Oh, that's the panel on the bottom. Okay, don't want that. I click on desktop. That's
I can't remember offhand. It's been so long since I've messed with it.
yeah. Once you set it where you want it. How about backgrounds? Nope, that wouldn't be it.
No.
Well, that's okay. I'll hunt it out in one of these tabs and work on that. So no problem.
All right. Anyway, anybody else got anything to bring up to the group? Gee, you guys are a fountain of knowledge.
I do have a question. Has anybody made the switch? Is anybody using Ubuntu 24.04, the new upgrade that came out fairly recently? It's been a few months now.
Not offhand.
Not yet.
Good reason. I've been fighting with it and unsuccessful. It runs just fine, but anything that I try to install from a dev file will not run. If it's a snap, it runs just fine. Dev file, no way.
It sounds like permissions. You don't have them set as executable.
On the file?
Yeah. You got to have permission settings in that. So you have to go to wherever the file is at in your file manager and right click on it to select permissions, and then you have to define what permissions are allowable. Read is usually allowed, but writing, rewriting, and execution are separate permissions you have to set. So if I downloaded Zoom from a Zoom's site, I might have to go in change the permissions so that it is now an executable to do the install. If I don't do the change permission to executable, then it's going to try and treat it as a display type program, and it may not even allow me to write or rewrite to it.
Well, I'm able to install okay, and it does, you know, show up where it should be. But just when I go to run it, nothing happens.
Still sounds like a permission, unless there's a bug in the new version. And one of the problems that is getting better is Wayland as your graphics display generator over X11.
I'll have to check out the permission. Didn't have a problem with that on the older version of Ubuntu, just this latest one for some reason.
Well, like, hey, bugs do crop up, and it's like Windows and Mac. Well, I'll drop out Mac. Windows and Linux share one thing in common. There's a plethora of different hardware configurations, and the manufacturers of each piece of hardware may follow Microsoft's requisite for dealing with permissions and stuff like that, and some may try and shave corners, and you don't get everything that Microsoft itself normally gives you in Windows. So in Linux, you may have some things that look quite like Windows, or you may have something that has similarity, but not all the functions and features that exist on Windows. And that's not a joke, because there's a curve of time between a new function feature in Windows before it might be available in a Linux distro.
And I like the way you put that, might be available.
Well, you got to understand, there's such a thing as copyright infringement and stuff like that, and lawsuits. Trust me, everybody has to be on their toes when they're creating this stuff so as not to end up getting sued. That's a real thing.
Lawsuits are no fun.
Hey, it's a real thing. It's not so much in Linux, because there's still that one version from a Brazilian outfit, Linux FX, and it is almost a mirror image of either Windows 10 or 11. You can get either version, and everybody's amazed that Microsoft hasn't sued them. But you got to remember, they're in Brazil, and Microsoft might have problems trying to sue them in Brazil. The only thing they might be able to get away with is suing them here in the United States and try and get some kind of a, I'll call it a internet access block. But trust me, even if they got it, they have to keep monitoring it, because you can change your domain willy-nilly, and you can have multiples just like the criminals have, and therefore get around any blockade unless they can get every single one of them found quickly and blocked. So you're kind of beating a dead horse, even taking it to court in the United States, because the odds are you're not going to achieve anything realistic. But
Sounds like a game of whack-a-mole.
yeah, it is. But that's a way it is with the criminals. The criminals have multi-sites, multi-websites, multi-email accounts, etc., etc. You block one, here's the other, another one. And it applies to ads, whether they're fake by the criminals or real ads. Trying to block all ads is like whack-a-mole. Anybody else got anything of interest? My goodness. Don't fall asleep, Earl. One other thing, Dennis, make note.
Okay.
You said you have one internet line. What you want to do is, like from Micro Center, get a 5-port switch. And then you take that one cable, plug it into port 1, and then you can have the other 4 ports for up to 4 more machines. You may need additional cables with the switch, but they usually don't all have to be long. Depends on, you'd basically take a tape measure between each of the machines and wherever you'd put the switch to find out the lengths you might require.
So in other words, it has this switch just has one input connector for your internet, and then it has like 5 outs to split it to 5 out.
No, you only got 5 ports, and one of the ports is taken up by the one line you've got live now.
Okay.
You plug that in, and its internet access is available on the other 4 ports if they have a cable plugged in and plugged into the back of another machine.
Okay, got it.
Switches are very common. I've got about...
How do you differentiate this 5-port switch from not being, like a multi USB switch? Do they call this something particular?
Well,
Ethernet
wait
switch?
in the USB, you either have a hub or a powered hub. It depends on how many ports it has. The more ports, odds are you're going to need a power USB hub. And that's
but
because...
what do they call this one? An Ethernet switch?
A switch is just an Ethernet switch. There's 5-port, 8-port, 16-port. I think it's 28 next.
Okay.
And 32.
So Ethernet switch. Okay.
So I mean, they come in varying sizes, but it's just by the number of ports. And for yours is simpler than my layout. I have probably 5 or 6 switches in the house, and I've got one right in front of me at my feet. I've got over to the side at least one other switch there, and I got 2 in the back room where the router's at, and one other one. But a 5-port switch is fine. Try and get a gigabit switch. That way, no matter what your speed is, unless you've got internet access of a gigabyte, it'll cover any speed you got now, and if you upgrade your speed in the future, it'll expand with it up to 1 gigabyte of speed.
Okay, great. That's good.
Otherwise, you end up with a 10-100 switch, and that's too slow, especially when you're trying to share multiple machines like that.
Okay, got it.
Okay, anybody got anything else? Let's see what I got here. Okay. All right. Let's see if I can fry the computer. That. Okay. You guys are gonna try need a drink. Let's see that right now. Oops. Now, let's see if I can get this thing to work. Come on. Well, ain't that interesting? Hang on just for a minute. I got a problem here that I'm not. Huh. For some reason, while sharing, it wouldn't open up one of my connections. Don't know why. Interesting. Something new, it seems like every meeting. Something pops up. Okay, I got that. Now, let's see if I can.
I don't want to interrupt you now, Tim, but at some point, I do have an answer to the question about brightness control in Mint.
Go ahead.
It is not included by default, but there is an applet. You can either download and install or use the applet's part of settings.
That means you go
Put it in.
right-click the taskbar in a blank area, and one of the pop-up items on the menu is applets.
Yeah. And then you would search for brightness and gamma applet, GAMMA.
Well,
And then you eventually check it off. I did it
Well,
the
I
manual way.
You put a
I
check
right-
mark in front of
I
it.
right-clicked,
Yeah, you right click
and then that's the menu that came up.
at the top is panel settings, then applets, which looks like puzzle piece.
Maybe I didn't do it right. Let me.
No,
let me
you're not
close
on
that.
the desktop. You're on the taskbar, which is called a panel at the
Yeah.
bottom.
So I want to be on the desktop here.
No,
and right-click.
no, no,
Oh, I want to be on the bottom.
on the
Task-
bottom. That's the
Taskbar
panel.
at the bottom.
Got it. Okay, now I see that.
And
All
click
right.
applets, second item.
Yeah, second item down.
Applets. Okay.
And there should be a search bar at the top. So you can
Yep.
search for brightness.
Yeah, just type in brightness.
You'll have to click in, yeah, brightness. And it should show you an option. Hit enter.
No. Let's see. BRIGHTNESS.
Okay. Maybe if you click on the magnifying glass, it'll search.
Okay, now wait. Over here, there's one that says manage and download. I should be
You're
on
on-
Download.
You're on.
Yeah, you
Oh, I'm on download.
download.
And
Yeah.
then over here, put in brightness again.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll try that. We'll try that.
just put the word brightness and hit enter.
Yeah, you see, I did a manual download, so I put it someplace where it could be seen. And then all I had to do was activate it.
Yeah, so nothing's happening. I hit download, I hit brightness, I hit enter, and it's not sort by, but there's nothing down there to sort
Let me
on.
see.
Go to the end of your search value and start backspacing one at a character at a time and hit enter.
Okay.
Now, it does take a little bit of time for the download panel to load up, and then you should see a list.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. we're trying to download this from the internet or from something in my system?
Oh, no, it's internet. So if you don't have internet, it won't work.
Okay, but I'm going to write down the steps, though. So we right-clicked on the taskbar.
And it did come up if I was connected to the internet.
Okay, and then right-click on taskbar, and we selected applet.
Yeah, the applet with the puzzle piece.
Okay, and then once this applet opens up, I want to click on download.
Yeah. Then type brightness into the search box.
Type brightness, okay.
And it will show several different kinds of ways to do things. And it'll be the top.
There's different apps for brightness?
Yeah, different aspects of brightness, but what you'll need is the top one, which is just the slider.
Oh, a slider. Okay.
It'll put an icon on your taskbar, and when you left click on that icon, you'll have brightness and you'll have your red, green, and blue.
Okay.
So it's pretty straightforward. You'll get it.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Bob. I got a place to go now and look.
Yeah. But anyway, it's not included by default. That's all I wanted to say.
Got it. Yeah, I was looking under 10, 15 different icons here. It made no sense why I couldn't find brightness. But
yeah, Mint is kind of it's different from Ubuntu. It doesn't include everything.
Okay.
Okay.
And this is yeah, okay.
On today's handout, I refined last month's resource list, and now have multiple URLs available. One of them is Test Distros Online, and if I open this up, it gives you something like distro test used to have, only now it's distro C. And you would go down here, and whatever one you want, like Mint, you would click that and be able to play with it. This is Linux Mint Debian Edition, which Bob is using. I have a copy of it myself. So it's one of these things where you can try things out online. It doesn't save anything. When you get out of the site, it is ready for the next person to get the same kind of experience you had. The next one is Linux Links, and this is a I'm going to call it an informal Linux software site, and it also has reviews available. So you have the home page here in general categories, best software, reviews, series, info, and search capability. And this so far, from what I've heard, it seems to be a good site that so far seems to be safe to use for downloading Linux software. And the third one is Alternative 2, and this is crowdsourced type of software availability, and it gives you not so much the software to download, it gives you information about alternative pieces of software to, say, QuickBooks or Quicken, something like that. You might put something like that in, and it'll show you what it thinks are possible alternatives. So it's worth looking at when you're trying to find something you're familiar with from the Windows environment and what alternatives there might be for Linux. So those are the three there. Now, there's one other one here. This one here is expert answers to your small business questions. I'm assuming none of you have questions about having a small business and what software for accounting to use, human resources, retail, and stuff like that. But keep it in mind, because you may run into other people who are looking for the same kind of information because they do have a small business. And you can point them to this particular site. And they may be able to find some of the software that might be recommended for things like 6 new PayPal features, 9 best POS, point of sale systems, Gen Z, customer behaviors, many other things. Marketing, if you're not good at marketing, this may help you in sales and in marketing your business. Here's some basics for starting a new business. Things like that. So keep this site in mind. It's at the top of the handout as resources. And I'm not sure exactly if I'll have it every month, but I'll try and remember periodically to put it in the handout. All right. Understanding Linux links. Basically speaking, and the similar principles apply to Windows and Mac. When you are in File Explorer in Windows, you have libraries for things like download, documents, pictures, music, videos, etc. And these are links that look like a folder that when you open them up, it's showing you the links to the specific items and folders contained within that master link. And where the actual file is can be scattered all over your hard drive. All the library feature does is pull things together so that you have one place to look at for all your downloads, for all your documents, for all your music, all your pictures, all your videos, etc. So this gives you actually a little bit better view in Linux because you see everything. Whereas in Windows, you have you should have at least 2 accounts on the computer, an administrator account and a standard account. And you do your daily activity in the standard account, and you only go into the administrator account when you need to. Problem is, especially for downloads, some of them will go into your standard account download folder, and some of them go into the administrator's account download. And so if you can't find it in your standard account, odds are if you look at the download folders under the administrator's account, you'll find what you're looking for, or vice versa. And I can actually cross-pollinate if I want to. I can take and if I've got something downloaded in my download folder for a standard account, I can create a new shortcut, and I have the knowledge and ability to drag that over to the administrator's desktop, and when I log into the administrator's account, that shortcut will be there and it will work. If I do it the opposite way, it's in the downloads of the administrator account, and I want to see it in the standard account, I can still create a shortcut, drag it over, but when I do it from the standard account, it's going to ask me for the administrator's password, because it's an administrator's level program. So these here is trying to show you the basics of how you can create your own links to something that doesn't have a major category, and or you want to make a custom category, such as if I was a programmer, I might have created my own little master folder of programs under which I have individual folders and individual files for programming. So one of my folders might be C, another one C++, another one Python, another one could be Rust, another one could be Java. There's so many languages, it's not funny. So you have what's called a hard link, and you have a symbolic link. And hard links basically is a way of organizational file, and links is a new file you will create that will point to the original source, and that's what happens in Windows. So a hard link is to a specific file. Symbolic link, on the other hand, difference between the hard link and symbolic link creation is that used with the -S option, let's create a symbolic link from this basic definition of this tilde means a default library to a specific file name, or a data folder, a folder called data, and a slash to a specific file. I'm not probably explaining it well enough, but generally speaking, we can do the same thing in Windows, and for the same purpose. I usually create in standard account on Windows 3 or 4 different shortcuts that go to Windows System 32 folder, and it's a hard link to some executables in there, so that I can look at Device Manager, which normally will only show you something. You cannot change anything in standard mode, but my shortcut will request the administrator's password, and I can make changes without going out of the standard account into the administrator's account, do what I want to do, and then go back into the standard account. Also, I have one for disk management. Disk management in standard account will show you nothing. And so the only way to get it is by having this shortcut that'll ask for the administrator's password. There's also the old style cleanup utility I can do, and also reset the WinSock is another one that I have. So these allow me to stay in the standard account on Windows 10 or 11, it doesn't matter which, create these hard shortcuts and give them the requirement that they must ask for the administrator's password to get full functionality without logging out of a standard account, go in the administrator's account, do what I want to do, log out of the administrator's account, log back into the standard account, and continue on with whatever I'm doing. So it's a interesting little thing. It's something, depending on each individual person's expertise. Dennis, you for one, you're just beginning, so this is something you would make note of for somewhere down the line. Earl, you're mostly an application person. Jeff, I'm not sure how deep you are into Linux, but in general, you have to kind of understand that you got to know where the data path is to the file you want to make a hard link to. And in a symbolic one, you're typing in the symbolic address. But you still have to know exactly where this file is located to be able to do it. Sorry about that. I'm having a little bit of an allergy problem, I guess. So that's the first article that I've got here. Does anybody have any questions about that so far?
Tim, sorry to interrupt. This is Bob. I have a quick question for you. Are you recording this?
I hope so. I'm supposed to be.
Oh, okay. It doesn't show up on the screen.
No, I'm not using Zoom today. I use OBS usually.
Okay.
Okay, and now the other Bob.
Yeah. Oh, anything more? Somebody else?
Well, I was going to say when you have this presentation off the screen, Tim, maybe is it possible you could show some kind of one of these things you have maybe on your desktop and show us like executing how it works kind of thing?
Well, this is a Linux group. I haven't made a shortcut in Linux so far.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
I've done this in Windows, and it works perfectly there. I've been using it for years. And this gets into the tips and tricks SIG. The last time, I think it was this month with Sanford, I wanted to show these things, but I couldn't get the share the desktop, which we've already proven tonight we can't do. And you can't see my current shortcuts. And at the same time, you cannot see me create one, which would be all important.
I may have a solution.
Good.
I can share my File Explorer as an app, I think.
Probably.
Let me see. I cannot do it while you're sharing, so I won't do that during yours. But I could do that, and creating a link for me, because I have a certain setting enabled, can be done just within my File Explorer in Mint. That would be Nemo.
Well, I mean,
I have enabled that ability to create a link.
Well, like I say, I have Linux here too on Mint, and bottom line, I could probably do the same thing you're talking about, but it also requires you to know where an executable is at to create a hard link to execute that program from a desktop icon or one that you put on the panel, which is
once again use USR share applications has lots of these.
Yes,
and I've had to do this with some things that didn't integrate well with a particular desktop.
Okay, and there are other locations too. Windows usually has multiple locations too, but most of them you don't have to mess with in creating the symbolic or hard link like I have to do with System32 under Windows.
Yeah.
Those, you have a gigantic folder there, and there's lots of different types of executables. Not just exe, but CPL, MSC type executables. I don't think there's any comms in there that I recall. But there's a whole lot of other files that you have to be able to scan through to find the ones that you want to create the hard link or symbolic link for. That's what I'm getting at, and I haven't bothered trying to find that in Linux.
One other thing that should be mentioned, Windows has another little wrinkle, which I've ranted and raged about in various of our Windows groups, and it's called a junction.
Yeah.
When you have something like my applications or my or application data or my documents, these collect from many different folders, and so one link has a lot of different branches or forks, and it may even link back to itself. And in Windows, they take care of this using certain permissions so that it won't keep getting into an infinite loop. When you go over to Linux and you start trying to copy anything that contains these particular links, you can get into all kinds of problems. And you have to avoid copying those things from Linux. But anyway, that's just a wrinkle in Windows, and it's called junctions. What we're talking about works perfectly well in either.
Okay, I'm gonna move on then. This is one I can't.
Hey there, folks. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into yet another Microsoft annoyance. Yeah, I know. It's like the gift that keeps on giving, right? Anyway, let's talk about Microsoft's recent, let's say, enthusiastic push to get everyone to hop on the Windows 11 train. Spoiler alert. It's not going as smoothly as they'd hoped. So last month, Microsoft dropped the bombshell that they're ramping up invitations for people to make the switch to Windows 11. And boy, oh boy, have they been persistent with those reminders since January 2024. But why all the fuss, you ask? Well, it turns out that good old Windows 10 is set to retire on October 14th, 2025. Yep, it's like your favorite show getting canceled. You knew it was coming, but it still stings when it happens. Now here's where things get interesting. While some folks caved into the incessant notifications and took the plunge into Windows 11 territory, and probably regretted it, others are feeling more than a tad annoyed by the constant reminders. And then there are those poor souls whose systems just don't make the cut for the upgrade. Talk about a bummer, right? Take me, for example. I've got this decent rig with an i5-8300H, 16 gigs of RAM, and a GTX 1650, and yet I'm not eligible for the Windows 11 upgrade. Can you believe it? Oh, but don't worry, there's a workaround. I just have to tweak a little setting in the BIOS. But honestly, I'm not really feeling it right now. So yeah, it's a minor annoyance, but an annoyance nonetheless. But hey, who needs Windows 11 anyway? I've got Fedora for all my Linux needs, and Windows for a few games here and there. Maybe it's a case of keeping your enemies close, huh? Nah, but in all seriousness, I'd love to see more people making the switch to Linux. It's got tons of benefits, trust me. And speaking of benefits, let's talk about why Linux might just be the better option for you. First off, you won't have to deal with annoying prompts from Microsoft ever again. Sounds like a dream, doesn't it? Plus, keeping your system secure is a whole lot easier on Linux. And let's not forget about dodging those pesky Windows 11 bugs. Been there, done that. Not fun. Oh, and in case you're wondering, I've tried Windows 11 on my laptop, and let me tell you, it's not exactly smooth sailing. Sure, some parts of the UI look pretty slick, but overall it's a bit of a mess. So yeah, if you're tired of dealing with Microsoft's shenanigans, maybe it's time to give Linux a shot. I know, change can be scary. But trust me, making the switch to Linux is totally worth it. So take a deep breath, think it over, and who knows, you might just end up loving it. Alright, so let's say you're convinced. You're ready to ditch Windows and embrace the wonderful world of Linux. But how do you actually make the switch? Don't worry, I've got you covered. First things first, you'll want to get acquainted with what Linux is all about. It's a whole new world, but I promise, it's not as daunting as it seems. Next up, familiarize yourself with the essential applications available for Linux. Spoiler alert. There's pretty much everything you need, minus a few exceptions like the Adobe suite. Now comes the fun part, picking a Linux distribution. Personally, I'd recommend starting with Ubuntu, Linux Mint, or Pop! OS. They're beginner-friendly and super reliable. Oh, and don't forget to brush up on your terminal skills. Trust me, mastering the command line will make your life a whole lot easier in the long run. And hey, if you ever come across a piece of software that's not available for Linux, don't sweat it. You can still run Windows apps on Linux with a little bit of tinkering. So there you have it, folks. A crash course on why Windows 11 might not be all it's cracked up to be, and why Linux could be the better choice for you. Remember, it's never too late to make the switch. So why not give it a shot? Who knows? You might just find yourself wondering why you didn't do it sooner. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.
Welcome back. Today we're here to go on a loving tirade about Linux Mint. Linux Mint is the desktop that I have been running on the daily for well over a year now. And it's probably the first time in some time where I've settled into one particular desktop. And it got me thinking, what is it about this project that keeps getting better for me as an end user? And then it dawned on me, it's kind of because Linux Mint is, as far as I can tell, the best desktop Linux distribution. I know it's always a bit bawdy making those sorts of claims on the internet because there's always going to be somebody who disagrees, and with good reasons. But I'm going to try and give you 10 of the reasons why I believe in 2023, taking into account some of the recent announcements that Linux Mint have made, why I think Linux Mint deserves a place as the supreme desktop alternative to Windows and Mac. So let's jump in. The first reason I think Linux Mint should be considered as the supreme desktop Linux distribution is because of its user-oriented design. Each of the design decisions that the Linux Mint team have made and continue to make over the years seems to have the user, the end user's interests in mind. When you think about some of the other big desktop players in the space today, I'm thinking Fedora, Ubuntu, Manjaro, and others, there have been decisions that have been made that weren't always in the best interest of the user, both in design and in back-end stuff and financing and a bunch of other stuff. But it always seems like, at least from where I'm sitting, watching Linux Mint as a project for over 10 years, that they iterate with the end user in mind. Not only is the development cycle fed by what the end user of Linux Mint would want, but also the UI decisions and the decisions to keep the UI more or less the same and keeping it accessible for the new user. There's a bunch of ways that this particular factor is going to filter in to all of the different parts of what makes Linux Mint a fantastic project. But number two is simplicity and consistency. This is something that I think I really noticed back in the day. I used to look at a desktop like Cinnamon and go, ugh, it's just a bit bland. Like there's not enough fancy stuff, there's not enough animations, there's not enough translucency, there's not enough cool stuff, for lack of a better word. And then I realized that at the end of the day, everyone is going to change their Linux distribution to suit their needs. But everybody has to start somewhere. And when you have a user interface that has a lot of cool stuff, but no simplicity, it ends up being a huge barrier to entry. So Cinnamon seems to strike an almost perfect middle ground on a knife edge between having enough customization to satisfy a power user, but having enough simplicity and consistency that your average user who doesn't want to mess with their PC can feel at home. And more often than not, they obviously lean into the way that a Windows PC operates. It's shocking to me just how much I can get done on a Linux Mint distribution within 30 minutes of installing it. And I think that says wonders for how both simple and consistent Linux Mint as a desktop project has been for so long. Number three, transparency. This is a big one, and I think it's something that I have come to appreciate even more as time has gone on, because of the fact that the Linux Mint team and their development cycle does seem to be very focused on the end user. They're actually really good at explaining, if you go digging, on their blog why they make the decisions that they make. And as time has gone on, they've also become really transparent with how they make their funding, for example. So Linux Mint are primarily a donations-based funding. So every month they post an update and they give just a list of who donated what and which companies are sponsoring them that month. And when they make financial deals that might benefit the project, like the deal they made with Mozilla to ship a standard version of Firefox instead of a customized version that had affiliate links in it that was financially benefiting Mint, they do disclose that to their end user base. And I feel like the transparency that the Mint team have with their end users helps foster this trust and consistency in their project that keeps users coming back and keeps users donating. Like if you run down the list here and look at how many people have made more than one donation, it's pretty astounding. And I think it speaks volumes for how people feel about the development and the team behind this project. Number 4, pragmatic iteration. So what I mean by this is that the open source world, and desktop Linux specifically, is always growing and changing. It seems like there's a new shiny thing to try out pretty much with every release. And a project like Fedora or Arch or Manjaro or whatever it is a fantastic way to try out those new shiny things. However, Mint takes a more pragmatic approach. There's no better example of this than with the display server. For those who aren't aware, a display server is kind of like the interface between your hardware and the software, running it, projecting it as a display that you can interact with. The display server that Linux Mint uses is one that's old. It's pretty antiquated. It's X or Xorg or X server. Whereas most modern distributions are shifting towards Wayland, which is more capable when it comes to scaling and all that kind of stuff. But it's also been problematic as it's rolled out. Mint has taken a more pragmatic approach of, do our end users want this? Yes or no? And then gradually working on it. Now, up until very recently, I was under the impression that there wasn't no work being done on Wayland adoption, and that kind of had me worried because I didn't want to see a massive break. However, in true Linux Mint form, they have had some work going on it in the background, and on their most recent blog posts, they did actually mention, we are starting work on Wayland. It's not going to be ready for some time because we're still kicking the tires. We want to make sure it's done right. And I think that is typical of what I've come to see from this project over many, many years. And the fact that they can keep a pragmatic, iterative approach makes them a very stable project to keep coming back to. Also, they have a back door in that if the burning ship of Ubuntu was to go down completely, and at any point Linux Mint decided that they needed to completely switch codebase, they do, because they've already put the work in to make a pragmatic alternative to the Ubuntu-based mainline edition in Debian, in the Linux Mint Debian edition, which in itself is a fantastic project and a fantastic distribution to run. So they might not always be the first to adopt new stuff, but they're often one of the best when it comes to implementing and stabilizing some of this stuff for the end user. This also allows users to enjoy what they love without unnecessary change being forced on them. And it's those kind of decisions that usually force people to change which distribution they want to run or abandon Linux altogether. So reason number 5 is that Linux Mint embraces the value of a first impression. Finally, I felt like for a long time I couldn't recommend the Linux Mint project just because of how poor their website was. Well, over time, their first impressions have continued to improve, and it's gotten to the point now where I'm not outright offended by the theming that they use. In fact, the amount of customization they give you, the amount of gorgeous wallpapers they give you, the amount of polish that has gone into their website rewrite, etc., etc. Over the last 3 years, Linux Mint has really turned the corner from being a very average-looking desktop to something that actually looks, in its own way, very clean and elegant and minimalistic. Which brings me to my next point, which is number 6, utility. There's something so refreshing about Mint's minimalism and utilitarianism in that even though when you're first presented with a Linux Mint desktop, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot going on. I mean, it's a desktop, there's a panel, and there's some stuff in the corner called a system tray. But below the surface, as you start digging away at what this thing can do and some of the tools that are built into it, I gotta say, there's actually a lot of stuff that you can do out of the box here that a lot of power users and normal everyday users really appreciate. For example, the integration between Timeshift and the system, the driver management, the update manager, the software manager, all of these custom tools that the Linux Mint team have continued to develop and roll out over the years and tackled multiple toolkits along the way, continue to show just how good some of these tools are, not just for the fact that they are not bloated and a mess to look at, but the fact that they actually do have a lot of power behind them. A recent example of this one would be the fact that they now have a bulk file renamer. Again, it's just not something that they had kicking around in the background before, but as they continue to add features to it that their user base seem to be looking for, and as the Cinnamon desktop grows in its capacity, it's great to see Linux Mint hold on to its minimalism while giving a lot of fantastic options for the burgeoning power user. Stability. Honestly, the stability of the Linux Mint project has been one of the things that I've appreciated most over this last year. The fact that I have installed an OS that is effectively based on an OS that came out almost 2 years ago at this point, and the fact that it is stable, it runs like a dream, it gets updates when I need it. With the recent addition of the Edge ISO, I now have compatibility with any recent hardware straight from the install. I can upgrade to a newer version of the kernel from the update manager if I so choose. The fact that when a new release of Linux Mint comes out, I can do minor updates and major ones without having to do a fresh install means that this system has been really stable for me and has been settled for a long time and could continue on, something that we can't say about every open source project out there. And when you do have issues, they actually give you the courtesy of a tool that can help report on your system and give any crash reports that you might come across so that you can try and troubleshoot those more effectively. Number 8. Integrity and privacy. I think this is something that we've come to value more as time has gone on because of the fact that at the end of the day, a distribution or a project has to make money, and the amount of backdoor deals that get done that don't always get disclosed, or the changes that get made to benefit a project financially are sometimes hard to reconcile. Some of the movements that Red Hat have made under the jurisdiction of IBM has made the community pretty salty, and maybe the same could be said for Canonical and Ubuntu. However, Linux Mint over here in their own little lane still manages to create a distribution that their user base likes, and they also, with that transparency, have built up a decent reputation for privacy in that they don't have any telemetry enabled by default in any of their system. Now, obviously, when it comes to third-party software like Firefox and Thunderbird, there is definitely going to be some telemetry present there. You can turn it off if you want. However, the system itself doesn't collect any telemetry. Now, there's pros and cons about just the functionality of telemetry, but at the end of the day, for people that value their privacy, they're upfront. They say that they don't collect any, and they don't. And I think that's a really important selling point, if you will, for a project that's free, to switch people over. Because at the end of the day, Windows and Mac are both becoming very, very encroaching in terms of just how much data they collect from their users. And so I think giving them a polished alternative is a great way to start that process of becoming more aware of where your data is and how it's being used. Number 9, a respect for the free and open source world. Honestly, I don't need to say too much about this one. In my mind, Linux Mint is a gateway to the open source world for so many people because of the fact that they use recognizable brands like Firefox and LibreOffice and other things like that. It also puts the open source best foot forward in that it doesn't take an absolute purist approach, but at the same time, it does respect a user who wants to remain as open source as possible by opting in to things like restricted codecs or hardware drivers that are proprietary, etc. The fact that Linux Mint continues to toe that line between being privacy and open source and free and open source respecting, but at the same time being an easy distribution to get into Linux, I think is very well done. Finally, the last reason that we should all agree that Linux Mint is the supreme desktop distribution in 2023 is because the documentation and support for this distribution continues to grow. when it comes to the official documentation that's out there, there used to be an official PDF manual that they used to put out with every release. As time has gone on, that's become a little bit odious. And so what they do instead is they have an official installation guide that's available from the Linux Mint website. You can download that in whatever format or language you so desire. And they also have a slowly developing user guide that's available on their website that's kept up to date as opposed to these old PDF versions. But the fact that there is documentation, both official and then a wealth of support available from their forums, which I've always found to be a great place to lurk and find solutions to things, and the fact that it's based on the world's most popular Linux distribution, being Ubuntu, it's not hard to find solutions for the things that you need. So, whether you are into gaming or just wanting to run your home office, or whether you are a student, or whatever your use case might be, Linux Mint seems to provide the best of all worlds when it comes to running Linux on your desktop for yourself. Are there better options out there for enterprise? Absolutely. Are there better options for a pure gamer? Absolutely. But I don't think there is a better option in 2023 for the vast majority of PC users in the world. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching.
Okay. Any questions on those two? Okay.
He mentioned something called it was halfway through whether Linux Mint was going to get into, and I can't remember what he said, glucose or gluntu, or, and I didn't know what he was talking about, and you probably don't know what I'm talking about, but he mentioned he's good to see they're getting into this, and I didn't understand what that was. But
Are you talking about when he was talking about graphics?
could be.
There is Xorg and there's Wayland.
Wayland, that's what he said. I didn't know what that meant. Okay. That's graphics?
Wayland is an advanced graphics stack, which is going to change how the desktop environment works. In many ways, it's smoother, more powerful, and can handle more modern hardware. Xorg has been patched and patched and patched. It's no longer officially under development for new features either. It's similar to with sound. There used to be Awesome Mixer, which was very command line. Then there was Pulse Audio, which we now use, which is kind of in between and has a lot of different controls you have to tweak in order to get anything to happen. And now they want to integrate everything into Pipewire, which is the next thing that's coming down the line. So Wayland is the next thing that's coming down the line in the graphics stack.
Okay. Okay.
I might as well, at this point here, you see my moniker on the screen. I can't get rid of it. We were talking before the meeting began about the fact that Zoom has changed some things, and I used to have on the Linux screen on the right side either myself as the speaker or everybody that it can squeeze onto a column on the right side of my screen. Well, you don't have the hide option anymore. So apparently where that moniker for me is coming from is behind the current screen. So if that's what you were wondering about, I sure have been trying to rack my brain where it's coming from. And the only thing I can think of is, since you can't hide the attendees like we used to be able to do, this is what you're stuck with. This has got me labeled here because the screen behind it is showing the gallery view of all people signed in.
Tim, when I was sharing my screen, I was able to find under more, I could hide participants.
Well, I'll take a look.
And let me mention this, Tim. I'm looking at the screen right now on both the Chromebook and my Samsung Windows 8.1. On the Chromebook, it doesn't show at all. It's not there. But yet I see it on the Windows 8.1. There it is, big and bold. But Chromebook, nothing. Not there at all. Don't know why.
You got to understand they all work a little bit different. But technically, Chrome OS is a version of Linux. But it doesn't always have the latest, greatest going for it. That's why you have to periodically update Chrome OS.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you right now, Bob.
If you don't see it, it's okay. It's not that annoying.
I don't see it, and that's not a joke.
Yeah, because I was able to do it, and it was one of the first things I did.
All right. Anyway, we'll move on.
Out there. I actually tried Linux Mint probably over a decade ago. I tried Linux Mint like Linux 14, I think it was called Nadia or something like that. It was pretty cool back then, but it wasn't good enough to be my daily driver. Linux just wasn't there yet. I still had to do lots of manual configuration, and it was fun, but it wasn't good enough for my daily driver. So when I saw this Mudohar video where he's kind of detailing, you know, how to run all the games, including Final Fantasy 14, which is a game I love playing, it blew my mind. So I installed Linux Mint. I slapped a secondary drive in my computer and I installed it, and it was painless. I made the boot USB. I just plugged it in. I restarted my computer, it detected that, and basically booted up like a demo version of Linux, like a little trial version where you can, this is even before you officially install it, so you can try it out. And it blew my mind. Let me pop open OBS here. I'm going to move myself over to the left. Left. Move myself over to the left, and even before I had officially installed the operating system, just when it was running from the USB, it detected my printer, and I could print to it. That blew my mind. If you've ever messed with Linux before, drivers are often a pain in the ass. For some reason, it seems like they've got brother drivers on lock, because I was able to print to my printer. I didn't even have to install it. It just detected it was on my network, and bam, oh, you want to use it? Cool. Blew my mind. I didn't know how it was possible, so that's super cool. So when you first install Linux or Linux Mint, it brings open the welcome screen, which I thought was really cool. And this gives you like a step-by-step. You can hit let's go. It takes you to the first steps. You can set your desktop colors, so you can do light mode, you can do dark mode, you can do mixed if you're a psychopath. You can choose your colors. I liked green, so I went with that. So it kind of has like this green mint, you know, undertone to it. I kind of like that. So you go through and you set your settings. You can create system snapshots, because one thing with Linux is that it's very easy to break things if you start messing with things. So it takes snapshots. It does. I just did like the recommended. So I just did the recommended, and it keeps like the last few snapshots, and in case I break something, I can go back to it. So you can see I've got a snapshot every day since I installed it, basically. So I've been running Linux for I've been running this distribution of Linux for about 4 days now. part of my job as a developer is I use Linux all the time. I have a bunch of Ubuntu servers that I booted up that I run various things on. But I just do command line stuff with that. So I'm okay at Linux. I'm not like a guru by any means, but I've got familiarity with it, and I've messed with it throughout the years. I would come back and visit it and see what the progress has gone, and I would check it out for a bit, and then I would like, it's not quite there, but it's getting there. I'll see you later. So then I would go back to Windows because programs and things that I had to use were only on Windows, so I felt stuck. But I've been getting really tired of Windows lately, like really tired of it. I'm not happy with Windows 11. I don't like how they're cramming Copilot into everything you do, and you know that they're training the AI on all your data, and you have no choice. So, well, I do have a choice. I switched to Linux. So, I don't know. That might not bother you. It was starting to bother me. And I got tired of just fighting with Windows all the time. So I'd rather just fight with Linux. I'm at that point now. It's kind of like in my game devlogs where I started out in Game Maker Studio, and then I got to like doing UI stuff, and I was like, oh my god, I would rather rewrite my entire game from scratch in a new engine than do UI in Game Maker. So I switched to the Godot engine. I've been much happier. Well, that's kind of how I feel about switching to Linux Mint from Windows. Like, it's a bit of a hassle for me because some things don't work, but for the most part, everything I've tried seems to work out of the box now, which blows my mind. So this welcome screen here walks you through setting up your drivers, which super nice. So it looks for drivers. It gives you the option of open source or proprietary drivers if there are some. I think that this version of Linux Mint I'm running doesn't have the most recent like Linux kernel, so some of the drivers won't be available to me, but for the most part, everything seems to be working fine for me so far. So I've got the NVIDIA proprietary drivers, but I could also try running these open source drivers if I wanted to, but I don't know if that'll work at all. So I just stuck with the NVIDIA driver. I got my GeForce GTX 1660 Super still trucking along after all these years, and yeah, so cool. Driver installation, and for the most part, everything else was already it just works. Keyboard, mice, camera, microphone, it just works. All that stuff worked. I plugged it in, I didn't have to install any drivers, it just worked, just like you would expect an operating system to do in 2024. It also detected my printer, like I said earlier, I could print to it, I didn't have to install it, that blew my mind. And it detected my graphics drivers and installed the right thing for me. I had to manually specify that in Driver Manager, but I'm glad it gave me a choice. Super cool. Update manager, and then system settings, and then it has like this software manager, which is like a little pseudo app store, like a built-in collection of apps and programs and stuff that work on Linux. So I was like, okay, well, let's get the necessities. So I got Discord. So I've got that installed. That's been working great. I've got Godot. I got my game engine. I've got that installed. That's working great. I already set up Git, and I already pulled my code from my repository, and I've been working on my little game that I haven't even unveiled to you guys yet. I've been working away at that. So I'm able to do game development on Linux. That's awesome. I wasn't able to do that when I tried it back in like 2012. So that's super cool. I could have done it, but it required a lot of finagling back then. I didn't have to do anything. I haven't had to open my terminal and run like any sudo commands or anything. I haven't had to do any of that in the entire time that I've been running Linux Mint. For about 4 or 5 days now, I haven't had to do that once. Everything I've been able to get working, I just do in the UI. So that's fantastic. So I installed Godot. I was like, okay, cool. Mudahar's guide that he walked you through, he got Final Fantasy working through this app called Lutris, which lets you play other games that aren't just on Steam. I was like, okay, cool. So I'll get that going. And while I'm doing that, let's also get Steam going. So I downloaded Steam, and I've been playing around with it with a few games, but I think Steam has a big role to play in why Linux is now viable, is because they've been going hard on Linux for quite a few years now. So I remember years ago hearing about how, oh, you know, Steam, Valve is working on the Steam OS. It's going to be built on Linux, and it's going to revolutionize Linux, and it's going to be your main, you know, Linux operating system. It's going to knock Windows and Apple out of the park. And then I didn't hear anything else about it after that. And then they were coming out with, the Steam box, or the Steam machines is what they were called, which are supposed to be like consoles, but they ended up just being like streaming things to allow you to stream from your computer to it flopped. Nobody even knew what the fuck it was supposed to be. Nothing happened. And then the Steam Deck got real big. And if you don't know what the Steam Deck is, I'm surprised because everybody knows what it is, but Steam Deck is basically a handheld thing. It's like a beefed up Nintendo Switch that can for PC, and it runs like all the PC games, even ones that aren't like made for it. It still like has support, and it's still you can rig it up. How does it do that? It's using Linux. So they have this technology called Proton that allows you to run Windows games in Linux, or on the Steam Deck. And guess what? Since Linux is free and open source, all the other Linux distributions have taken advantage of that through Steam. So whenever I download something through Steam, it just works. And oddly enough, it seems to work even better than Windows. Now, that doesn't make any sense to me why it should, because it's going through compatibility layers, and it's sort of like emulation in a way. There's a performance cost to that, but for some reason for Linux, my games have been running smoother at higher frames per second than they were on Windows. I don't get it. I'm happy. So far I've had literally zero issues playing any of the games that I've tried so far. And yeah, I've just been playing a lot of Final Fantasy 14. It says I played 23 hours and 21 minutes, but most of that was because I left it on overnight downloading, and that counted towards playtime. So whatever. But I've been playing Final Fantasy 14 for a few years now. It's my go-to MMO currently. I don't make much content about it because I just like playing it with my friends, and it's kind of my way to just chill and relax. So I got Final Fantasy 14 running on here. I run it through this app called Lutris, and I think it uses like Wine, which is allows you to basically sort of emulate Windows or run Windows applications on Linux. I didn't have to configure any of it. I just installed Lutris, searched for Final Fantasy 14. It installed it. It pulled up the installer, like the actual downloader, the client. I logged in. It downloaded it, and it's working. I didn't have to mess with it at all. That was super cool. Well, that's awesome. So games, check. So let's talk about other stuff. So what are my big things? Obviously Discord. I got to have a web browser, so I installed Brave. That way I've got the ad blocking and stuff. I still have access to YouTube and all that stuff, so I'm good to go there. So web browser, Discord, video games, check. What else do I got to do? Well, I am technically a content creator, even though I haven't been making videos. Can I get OBS working? Yes, I have OBS working, and it works just like it did on Windows for me. There's a few like small details, like the screen capture is different, but it worked. I didn't have to configure it at all. It just fired right up, and the microphone was just detected right up. So I was able to get my filters added on my microphone. So I've got a noise gate to block out some of the other stuff. I've got noise suppression to knock out the background noise. I've got the gain. So if I talk super quietly, like almost like a whisper, right? It picks it up. And then if I talk super mega loud, the compressor is kicking in and stopping me from just blowing up your speakers and peaking your audio. And if I just go super loud, if it blows out the compressor, the limiter hard caps it. So I got my audio set. That's cool. I could add some EQ if I want to maybe take care of some of the sibilance in my voice or whatnot, if that's a problem. This is my first video I'm recording on Linux, so I don't even know. Well, I've got all that. I got the camera setting. I don't have my green screen because I have my treadmill in the way right now. I've got it popped up right in front of my TV so I can get my steps in the morning. Because I'm getting a bit chonky, you know, starting to lose some of that. So that's what I've been doing. But yeah, I've got this set up, and I can set up my scenes and stuff later. But OBS is basically set up and ready to go. So that's working. So after I get done recording videos, I have to edit them. On Windows, I was using DaVinci Resolve Studio like 18. I even paid for the full version. That way it uses my GPU. The reason why I haven't been posting videos is because having to go through and actually edit videos in DaVinci Resolve, I hate it. I hate it. I freaking hate it. Even if I take great pains to make a video where I don't have to do much editing, I hate DaVinci Resolve. It's a powerful software. It can do everything. It's not intuitive at all, and I'm tired of it. I kind of wish I might pull out my old MacBook and just try to go back to maybe iMovie and just make some basic shit with that, but now that I got Linux, I was like, okay, well, what stuff works? DaVinci Resolve apparently does work for Linux, but I searched on the App Store here, and I searched on Google to see what they use for Linux, and I downloaded this Kden Live editor, like video editor. And this seems to have the basic functionality. I edited like a little mini video just kind of testing it out, and it's much more painless than DaVinci Resolve is. Granted, it's probably more limited, but I don't even use 0.1% of all the features in DaVinci Resolve. I don't need that much shit. So this works perfectly fine. So I'm excited about this. So this video you're going to be watching is going to be edited in this. By edited, I mean I'm going to cut out a few things and slap my intro and my outro on it, and good to go, right? So that's good to go. So yeah, recording video and then video editing, check. What else do I typically do on my computer? Well, I do audio recording. So I've got my recording interface right here. I don't have my guitar with me currently because I took it to work because it was getting cold here. And I couldn't afford heating for a little while. So I was... well, it's cold in here, so I was wearing some layers, but I didn't feel right having my guitar freeze, and I couldn't just wrap a bunch of blankets around my guitar because it doesn't generate heat. So I took my baby to work so she could sit in my office. That way she's all nice and warm. And yeah, so guitar should be back next week. I'll bring it back, and then I can start playing around. So, but in order to record music, I have to have a DAW, a DAW. Now, on Windows, I was using PreSonus Studio One, which is a paid DAW. I think I paid like $99 for version 5 of it. And I was checking to see if that has Linux support. Apparently, I think one of the more recent versions, I think 6.5, apparently has experimental Linux support. But I don't think I have a license for version 6. So I would have to eventually look into paying that. Well, I can't afford that right now, so I'm not going to mess with that. So I was looking at other alternatives, and where's the store? Did I close it? I think I closed it. Where is it? Here it is. Software Manager. So there's some free alternatives on Linux. Some of them are really rough. The one I found I think I'm going to try out is called Ardor. And this, I think, will work for my needs. The screenshot's probably not the best representation of it, but this is a way older version. That's pretty rough. But yeah, so apparently Ardor is a free thing that I can use, so I'll try that out. I was also thinking about trying Reaper, which is a very common... it's not free. It gives you a free demo, and then you can buy like a lifetime license for $60. So I might try out the free 60-day demo, and maybe I'll throw $60 at it if it's worth my time. So it seems like making music should be a check. I haven't confirmed that yet, though. I'm not sure if my VSTs and stuff will work. I think they will. I know that Reaper has VST support, so I'm pretty sure Ardor does too. So the VSTs I used was for my guitar effects. I was using Bias Effects 2 by Positive Grid. I had paid, I forgot how much I paid for that, but I bought it. I bought that. And then I was also using, I think it was Easy Drummer 2. I don't think I upgraded to Easy Drummer 3. I think I've got Easy Drummer 2. And I've got like a few MIDI packs from TuneTrack. So for the drums. So I've got like Lamb of God drums and like Gene Hoglan and, you know, Dirk Van Buren and a few different like MIDI packs of just crazy metal drum beats that I use in my songs. And yeah, so I think for recording music, I should be able to do that here too. I don't see a reason why I wouldn't be able to. So that basically checks all the boxes for me. I can browse the internet. I can print to my printer. I can manage my devices. I can record. I can edit videos. I can play all the video games I want. I can make my own video games. I'm happy. And as of right now, I don't see any reason why I need to go back to Windows. The cool thing is that since I installed it on a secondary drive, it detected my other drive for me and automatically mounted it. So if I need to go back and get some files from Windows or whatever, I can just go to this drive and just go get my stuff. So if I want to, I don't know, get some music or something, do some Axe Wizard riffage, right? Yeah. Bam. So I can access my files. So right there, I don't have to, you know, manually mount the drive, which can be a pain and confusing if you haven't done that before. Or I don't have to, you know, I don't have to restart my computer and boot back into Windows and put my files on a thumb drive and then take it out and then boot back into Linux and then put my thumb drive back in and hope it auto mounts, and I don't have to worry about any of that. It just does it for me. Super nice. So I really think that is really good stuff. So I'm happy with that, and I am happy with Linux. So I thought I would share this for anybody who might be tired of Windows, because this world we live in today is sometimes it makes you just feel powerless, because it feels like you don't have any control over anything. Every time there's some new privacy update or there's some new EULA that you have to agree to before, or else you can't do anything. You've got no frickin' choice. Now I got a choice, and that feels good. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. Thanks for listening to me ramble. And hopefully this helps some people. Or how many of you use Linux? Have you tried Linux before? This might be the time to try it. I don't recommend just jumping in straight away and just like, oh, I'm gonna ditch Windows. You know, don't take Mutahar's advice and just delete Windows today. Take like a safer approach. I would recommend like taking out like an old computer if you've got one. Linux is tiny. Windows takes up about like 45 to 50 gigs of space on my drive. Linux Mint took 3, and that's large for a Linux distribution, but it does that because it's got all this fancy stuff. It's got all the UI stuff working and all the system settings, and you know, this actually kind of reminds me of Mac in a way, how the settings and stuff are laid out. So it's got all these system settings built in that you can tweak things, and you know, you can even customize it. Again, this is free and open source. You don't necessarily have to be a coder or a nerd to be able to do this stuff. So, you know, for example, I use this program called FlameShot to take screenshots. In Windows, I use a program called LightShot. Now that let me just hit the print screen key, and I can click and drag where I want. I can take my screenshot, move it around, I can resize it, and I can get a screenshot of just what I'm trying to actually take a screenshot of. And I think this even lets me do mark on it. No, that's a highlighter. Let me do back on that. Oh, here, I can draw on it. I can put arrows. You know, there's actual little arrows you can draw. So you can do all this stuff with a screenshot tool. I use this all the time. So FlameShot seems to be a good replacement for that. But when I pressed print screen, it didn't pop open like I wanted it to. So I was able to actually go in the system settings, and I was able to go to my keyboard, the shortcuts, and I was able to go to my custom shortcuts, and I was able to add a custom shortcut for Flameshot, and I was able to just have it run the actual Flameshot command. And I found this by doing a quick Google search, and I just threw that in there. I picked what key I wanted to do it, and lo and behold, it works. So that's super cool. So far, I haven't had to do the terminal thing once. I haven't had to go in here and do anything Linux related. I do have to do it for version control stuff because I use my git commands in here, but that's just, I do that in Windows anyway. So yeah, I'm no stranger to bash terminals, so I don't feel intimidated by it, but I'm just relieved I haven't had to go in here and fight with anything yet. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it, and I will hopefully see you in whatever video I make next very soon, now that I've got
Okay. Any questions on that one or comments? Bob?
I would like to say one thing about drive recognition. That varies a lot depending on how your system is set up. I have had to manually mount SSDs and manually edit what's called FS tab, which keeps track of the drives that mount on boot.
Yeah, but that's getting a little deep right at the moment. Okay. I'm getting late, so let's see what we can do here.
That was a good presentation.
Hi, welcome to Jeremy's Tech Channel, and today we're going to be discussing what is the best Linux distribution for daily use. My name's Jeremy, this channel's about tech, go figure. And today we're going to be discussing what is the best Linux distribution for day-to-day use. For me, this brings in two major groups of people. One is people who just want to get a system up and running to do daily productive tasks, or someone who might be a beginner looking for an easy way to get going learning Linux. There probably are other categories of why you may want to choose this distribution, but I think focusing on these two might be the biggest use case scenarios. If you're one of those, or if you're curious about this distribution, continue watching. The distribution we're going to be talking about today is Linux Mint. If I were to suggest one distribution for people who are just wanting to install something on an older system, for Linux beginners, for people that are wanting a system for day-to-day use, checking email, surfing the web, watching a video, those kinds of things, Linux Mint is my #1 choice. If you were to search on the web this question, you're going to get dozens of answers because there are a lot of great options. But I will say Linux Mint probably comes to the top on a lot of people's lists of suggestions to use and to try. Linux Mint provides a lot of wonderful support through the community, through the tools that they provide in the desktop environments that they offer. And it's just a really nice, smooth, easy experience, especially if you're uncomfortable with the terminal. They really provide a lot of tools to make sure you don't have to get in there very much or at all. So what I want to do is take a look at the Linux Mint website and walk through the process of installing it onto a system. If you're a beginner, this is a great way to see what you need to do, what you're looking for, or if you're someone who's just researching Linux Mint as something that you may want to choose, this will kind of let you see the whole process. We'll walk through the download, install process, and then we'll walk through the tools that they offer and give some reasons why it is a great tool for day-to-day use. I feel confident to tell you that this is one of the best, if not the best, for just general use case distributions. And you should download it and see for yourself. But if you're not sure yet, stick around. Let me walk you through some of this and see if this is for you. So here is linuxmint.com. I believe this is going to start to help build some confidence for you to use this distribution. But we're going to go through and just quickly look through a couple of things and see if this is something that interests you and shows why I think it's such a great tool before you even download and install it onto your machine. They really decide and frame the language here, the verbiage of the website and who they're trying to help. They say it is designed to work out of the box, and I put some quotation marks in there, and comes fully equipped with the apps most people need for productivity, web, gaming, multimedia, and graphic design. That sounds like you? They're saying give it a try, you'll love it. Okay, whatever. You can't trust someone's word for it, right? You got to figure it out. Just like reading Rainbow, you know, don't take my word for it. They do try to keep things simple. People are passionate about it and they love supporting it. If you go here, you can see the links. They have a Discord channel. They have a Reddit community. They have IRC. They have a podcast. There's social media. There's blogs. The forum is massive with a lot of people. And you can see right there, beginner questions. And there are tens of thousands of posts just right there. And so they really do try to help people out and try to work through it and are ready to answer those questions, which is important. They are not going to be bothered by your new question, not understanding how to say something. They may help you work through that problem or how to ask the question, but they'll do it, at least in my experience, nice and cordial. When you click on download, you have the latest version. We're going to download today the Cinnamon Desktop Edition. This is their baby. This is their flagship version of Linux Mint. So I suggest you start here. After downloading the ISO file, now you need to burn it onto a USB drive. You can choose the tool that they suggest in this awesome Linux Mint installation guide, which, man, having this is really great for you to go step by step. The reason why I found it so important to just go ahead and just walk through this piece is if you want something for daily use, you want something just easy to make happen, easy to get going, and easy to continue to use. So this is the phase of easy to get going. And once you've downloaded that ISO file, once you've flashed that USB drive, now you're going to put that USB drive in your computer and boot into it. There's so many different machines. You will need to Google your machine if you don't know how to get into the BIOS and get yourself to boot into that USB drive, to choose that USB drive device. If you want more information on that, there's a lot of resources. I did a Linux migration checklist, part 1 and part 2, that you can check out to see about getting a software inventory and a hardware inventory, which includes setting up and booting into your computer to boot into the USB drive versus your local hard drive. And let's continue on and see why Linux Mint is great for day-to-day use. So this is the install screen. We will quickly walk through this. Remember, if this is great for day-to-day use, we need to make sure it's easy to get going, and then easy to get set up and use day to day, and that it's going to last us a good long time once we have it set up. So that is why we're going through this quickly. This states that multimedia codecs are required to play some video formats and to properly render some websites. So we're going to go ahead and install media codecs. In this instance, we're just going to use this whole drive for Linux Mint. It's making sure that you want to make these changes on this disk, and click continue. Make sure your time zone is correct. I am in Vietnam right now, so it's all that. But if you need to change it, you just click to your time zone and you continue. You're going to set up your user at this point. This is going to install, and then once this is done, I will reboot the system, and then we will walk through and show why this is a great operating system for day-to-day use. All right, welcome to Linux Mint. We're going to go through some of these first steps. We're going to check and see what's already here on the system to see if you even need to install any packages at all for your applications, and how user-friendly the tools are so that things can get out of the way and you can get right on to surfing the web or emailing Uncle Joe about something weird that you do. I don't know. So here we go. Let's go. We're going to follow this. You can change your desktop colors if you really want to do this. I need to make sure that my system is going to be backed up so that I don't lose something if something goes wrong. They go ahead and let you set up snapshots through Time Shift. It's kind of like Time Machine on a Mac, and it will ask for your password. This is your password that you set up when you set up your user. rsync, next. And I suggest you do this right at the beginning, just like they show us this is a first step, because setting up your backup will save you a lot of time if something goes wrong. Then you can set up how many times it's going to take a snapshot of your system, and now you're done. You've set yourself up your Time Shift and your backup tool. You can go ahead and create one right at your install so that you have something that if you want to start over, you can get right to where you started from, just from this. Driver Manager. If you have a Wi-Fi card that needs a driver or a graphics card, a GPU, this is where you're going to go. That will let you check, and it's all graphically done, and it will take care of it. So if you got an NVIDIA graphics card, which I've done on a Linux Mint machine, it just picks it up, installs that driver, and you're able to game away or edit video, whatever you need. The next thing it's suggesting is to update, and you just click launch. All of this is graphical, and if you don't want to remember, oh, what's that command? Or, oh, how do I do that in this system? I'm not in a Arch-based system now. I'm in a Red Hat or Ubuntu or Debian. I can't remember. You still can do that on a terminal and do that here, which is also great. But if you don't want to, so easy. And then you go ahead and you install your updates. And then they go ahead and get comfortable in the system. I want to address the backgrounds and the effects and the fonts and the themes, the accessibility, the applets, the desk lists. These are things that you can put on the desk if you want to put a clock or a digital photo frame or whatever you want. It's right here. It's nice so that you can make the system more comfortable for you. And then you can go ahead and configure your firewall. Firewall is enabled. Super easy. One of the main reasons that this is a best for day-to-day use is we got it going and got the system up set up. Simply, I never had to open up a terminal. If that scares you, if it doesn't scare you, open up the terminal and do the same thing. It doesn't matter. There's a couple things I need to address right here. My resolution is incorrect. How do I change that? I'm going to right-click and I'm going to go to Display Settings. And now my desktop settings is set the way I want it to. I say that I'm going to make it 200% to make it easy for you guys to see. For it to be a good for day-to-day use, my understanding is it would already have things to surf the web, consume content, communication like email, chat, those kinds of things. To be able to get your photos and things of that nature, edit them, download them, manipulate them however you need. And to be able to listen to your audio, be able to set up your headphones easily, things like that that you could do day to day. You're not having to fiddle around with things. So let's just see what is in each place. This is the main menu.
I'm going to pause it there. Those of you, when you get the download of the articles and stuff, you can play with it further. I just want to move on to at least one more in that because we've got, here's one that most of you do need. I use AnyDesk, and I use it on Windows and on Linux. And if I had a modern Mac, I could probably run it there too. So in any case, this is an article to go through and how to set up AnyDesk on Ubuntu, Debian, or Linux Mint. Now, with Debian in here, if you're like Bob Premick or myself, you can follow this for Linux Mint Debian Edition, and Linux Mint is the Ubuntu main version. And then if you got Ubuntu, like sounds like Jeff Scott, this is how you use it there. And it gives you the ability to either receive help from somebody else by them getting into your machine with your permission, or vice versa. You can give help to somebody else who needs some help. So this is something. It also has the Red Hat system and OpenSUSE, Fedora, etc. How to get it in there. You got to. This is some of the basic screens, and basically, you have your address, your address number that you can give somebody else to support you, or you get somebody else's number to support them. And it's not hard to use. There's a couple features that they've added since I started using it that I haven't tried out yet. I'm interested in doing so, and it may help everybody out. So there's that one there. How to create and manage workspaces. Now this says on Ubuntu. This applies in generality to any Linux distribution, whether it's Arch, it's Red Hat based type of OS, or any of the Debian based systems, which includes Ubuntu, Mint, etc. So basically workspaces or virtual desktops are a group of tasks or programs on a dedicated window on your PC. Workspaces are ideal for improved focus, productivity, and clutter-free desktops. You can use workspaces to streamline your work by focusing on a set of related tasks at a time. To underline these importances, workspaces are available on all major operating systems, including Windows and Mac. And this is something even I have to remind myself and use from time to time. I'm not using it as much as I expected to, but I do use it from time to time, Nat, to do basically what it's talking about, to clear my screen by shifting some of my work from screen 1, which is the default desktop, to say desktop 2 or 3, and I can focus on just that there, and at any time I can go back to screen 1 and do other things, maybe because maybe I heard a audio tone that says I got new mail, or I got somebody coming into a Zoom meeting net, and I'm off on another screen doing some other work. So this is something worth looking at. How to access Linux files on iOS or Android with network share. Basically speaking, this is using network share to access on an iPhone or an Android phone from your network sharing capabilities of your home computer. So this is a way of going through setting this up, and if you're away from home and there's a file that you want to access that's on your desktop, well, okay, as long as your desktop is running, you might be able to tie right into your computer and see the document right on your phone. First, look at Ubuntu Lomiri. I don't know how you enunciate that, but this is Ubuntu's Touches mobile desktop arrives. So from what I'm gathering here, this version, which is new, it's based on Unity 8 UI, is for Touch Mobile OS. And I did know, and I've never used it myself, Nat, some people, maybe they have an older iPhone or a Android phone. I don't remember which this was made for. But you can replace the OS that's default with this Ubuntu's touches mobile desktop and have a portable Linux computer that you carry around in your pocket, and you might even be able to still use it as a phone. I didn't get deep into it because I didn't have time. Flatpak. Now, Ubuntu uses snap packages, and Mint likes to use Flatpak. You can install the opposite on each of the different desktop OSs. It really doesn't matter. So if I wanted to add snap packages to Linux Mint, I just install the snap base, and I can install snap packages. And on Ubuntu, I can install the Flatpak package and install Flatpak packages on Ubuntu. So it's just a way of getting simplified installations of many applications to have an entire running environment encapsulated, so that if you remove a regular app from Linux, you could break one or more of your other applications, but you won't break a snap package or a Flatpak package by uninstalling a standard Linux software package. And sometimes you also run into conflicts where you're installing a new one and it overrides something that another package that you have already installed on your system needs, and suddenly that one breaks, but your new one works. So you get, this used to be called on Windows-based systems DLL hell. It's not DLL files, but library functions work in a similar fashion to DLLs. I'm almost done here, and Linux Experience. I'm not going to play this one much.
Have you tried Linux, perhaps?
Or Linux is way better. Linux is the best operating way.
Buongiorno.
Yeah, I've been using Windows for most of my life, and a few years ago I've fallen victim to Mac OS. But Linux? I've never dared to enter that garden. Who knows what deep, exotic creatures lie beneath.
This is a person's experiences dipping his toes into the Linux world. So I'll let you guys play with that. And the last one I got here, these are 4 classic Linux tools that have better modern alternatives. So basically the tools are BAT is cat with syntax highlighting and JIT integration. I haven't gotten deep into this. I'm interested in some of it. Rip Grip is a recursive grip application. And once in a while, you'll find in articles where they are using grip. Well, this gives you a recursive version of grip that allows you to do more powerful functions and features. LSD is a fancy formatting, and FD is a friendlier find. So these, I'm interested in the fine and the fancy formatting. I might look at the grep because every once in a while I am running grep from various articles, and I want to see what this version provides that might be more useful than the basic grep in command. I'm not sure about the bat is cat. I'll have to look at that one. But these are various things, and I'm going to see if I can take and stop my share, which ought to be a good trick. And let's see here. I forgot where my file manager is. So I'm going to bring up chat. Oops. And rehid that. And I'm gonna. Well, this is one that I got on Linux, unlike Windows. I can't drag and drop. I've got to try and open the darn thing up. Hang on a minute here. I'll try again. Oh, I see what's going on. This little sucker has a problem when I activate certain Zoom applications. It prevents me from doing other normal functions. That's what's going on. Let's see here. Okay, I'm going to have to close chat here. If it'll let me. Oops. Here. No, I don't want that. What the heck? Boy, this sucker just almost locked up. There, got that. Get that out of my way. Now, oops, July, copy. And let's open up chat again and paste. Ooh. Boy, I'm trying to cheat here, and this little sucker ain't going to cooperate. Zoom is really pulling some shenanigans. I'll tell you that right now. And I'm not the only person having a problem with it. I've been in too many other meetings where people are having some of the same basic issues. So what I'm going to do here is I will share from a Windows machine. I know it works. All right, and I got it. Oops. Well, now you open up two. And documents. And July. Oh, you rotten. Who did this thing to? Well, I gotta stick it in a flash drive. I hope I can access it. Yeah. Boy, you got to be nimble and think of all the possible ways you can get something accomplished. And
That'll keep your mind flexible.
pardon?
That'll keep your mind flexible. You have to keep in track of all the different ways to do something to find the one that works.
Well, apparently, Zoom has been working on this workspace, they call it now. And generally speaking, they've taken away some features like being able to look at the desktop and demonstrate something on the desktop. You no longer have that available. And then on top of it, the turkeys in Linux, it's if I'm trying to take the file manager and copy the file over to an open chat, I can't do it. And it locks everything up, so you got to close the file manager to be able to close the chat. And then I went back into File Manager, did a Control C to copy a file, closed that, and then opened up Chat again, tried to paste it. It says paste, and it does nothing. So they got some issues in the Linux version. I don't know if they know about them yet, but sooner or later somebody's going to scream about it. So anybody got any further questions or issues before we call it a night?
Well, about that dependency hell, Shotcut you can get by simply in Mint calling up the software app.
Right.
And it offers two different versions. You could get it as the Flatpak if you want, if you have FlatHub installed. Even if you don't, it has the traditional version, which then lists everything it wants to bring down with it. So it fetches the dependencies, much the way the Synaptic Package Manager can do. And as far as I know, it worked.
Well, it's been in the past where some people have installed a new one and old programs break, and or some people have a new one installed and have uninstalled an old one, and it breaks the new one. So
you can get breakage that way. There are problems with various dependencies which can conflict.
Right.
And you get less of that problem with Flatpaks.
Right. And that's partly because it acts as a containerized application which contains everything that's needed for that one application.
However, I think Shotcut is one of these programs that's more limited in the Flatpak than in the full install.
That wouldn't be a big surprise in that, because they're probably still focused on the traditional package install, and they're letting the Flatpak coast a while they work on traditional. And I'm sure that happens with Snap packs as well.
It happens a lot with snaps.
So these are the things we got to live with.
Yeah.
Anybody else got anything?
Something you mentioned at the beginning of the meeting was that Bob was using Linux Mint Debian versus Ubuntu, I guess. What's the primary difference? I mean, it can be summed up kind of briefly, or
There is a little bit of difference in the look and feel. It's not significant. And there's in the Ubuntu version, you got 3 different desktops: XFCE, Mate, as well as the Cinnamon. And in Linux LMDE, there's only the Cinnamon desktop, at least for the present. And basically, the Mint developers, because of some of the things that happen with Canonical on the Ubuntu stuff, is hedging their bet and saying, well, since Ubuntu came from Debian, we'll make a version of our Cinnamon Top Linux Mint and put it on the foundations of Debian software, and you have a fallback position. So if, let's just say Canonical went out of business, like a bankruptcy or something like that, and nobody else picked up their packages, one or more, the rest of us who are on Mint could fall back to installing the Debian-based version and have almost everything look and feel pretty much the same as on the Ubuntu version. There can be some differences because Ubuntu, or Canonical, makes their own enhancements and modifications to their version of Debian-based software.
Yes, the concern among those of us who used Ubuntu for a long, long time was the appearance of Ubuntu Pro, which is a subscription, and the tying of, or the changing of so much of the operating system core components, including the printers and the web browser, into snaps. And the fact that snaps don't easily share data with locations outside of where the default save location would be. Moving data into and out of these containers is difficult by design. So this whole idea that maybe Canonical is starting to commercialize Ubuntu, maybe they're starting to make 2 tiers of Ubuntu, it really rubbed a lot of us the wrong way. And the bailout for that is to say, okay, no more Ubuntu stuff. We'll just go with pure Debian, and if we have to import stuff, if we have to port stuff over, or even build a few things from scratch, we can do it. Those of us who are a little more advanced. If you're not so advanced, LMDE to a casual user is pretty much the same as Mint Cinnamon. You might find a few multimedia things that will be different.
Okay.
Does that cover what you're asking?
Yeah, I would say so. But how long has this
We're in
year or of the unknown of Ubuntu been around for recently? 6 months, a year?
Ubuntu has been getting closer and closer with Canonical has been getting closer and closer with Microsoft. I would say over the past 5 years, especially accelerating over the past 2 to 3.
Yeah.
The past couple of years, it's been getting pretty annoying because now Ubuntu, every time you fire up an update, every time you fire up the terminal form of the updates, you get a whole list of things that they say, for security reasons, you need to update. Oh, but you need a subscription to do it. Right now, the subscription is free for consumers for up to 5 machines, but who knows for how long. And the fact of the matter is, these are canonical versions of the software. They are security enhancements, and there is greater long-term stability support. It's 5 years, maybe even as much as 10 years, 8 years maybe, on some of the kernels, whereas the mainstream of Linux has gone down to 2 years support for LTS and long-term stability releases. And so it's extended support, it's extended security, and if you're an enterprise person, you're paying for it. So that sounds a lot like Windows.
Well, it's also more like Red Hat more and more in the sense that they have a commercial and a non-commercial version, and then IBM bought out Red Hat. So
Yep.
it's whatever IBM wants to call their stuff. And in a sense, Ubuntu with Conical might go the same route. Don't know.
Well, one of the worst case scenarios is SUSE has just told OpenSUSE to find a new name to rebrand. That means they are being forced to fork. They're going to become a totally new distro. And OpenSUSE has a rolling release, which is really cutting edge, called Tumbleweed.
Yeah.
And that's going to end up being rebranded. It will no longer be SUSE. And it will no longer have the support of the company.
Well,
And this is because of some of the decisions that were made by the open source project.
Well, I primarily use Gecko. It's kind of like saying Open SUSE is like Ubuntu, and Gecko is like Mint. So
Yeah,
that's the way I look at it.
yeah, fair enough. And there are other ways of packaging Linux. You can have Linux that's very locked down so that you cannot change anything in the operating system core, which is really good if you have a kiosk or something like that, or a corporate deployment. For Fedora, they have Silverblue. And for Ubuntu, there's a form of it that is immutable, and people can't mess it up. End users won't destroy it because there are things you can't change. There are things that'll roll themselves back. And however, this does limit what you can do with it. So if you want a general purpose operating system, Linux Mint Cinnamon is excellent to use. And it's one of the easiest.
Yeah.
And then if you really insist on being a purist, maybe drift over in the direction of LMDE.
And the immutable Linuxes that I've only known about for 2 or 3 months, and so they're fairly new, but I liken them to kiosk functionality, but also it used to be years back, the last time I was at a university for education, they had rooms full of computers for the student body to use. Well, you log in with your ID, you're doing your work. When you log off, whatever you did disappears from the machine, and they reinstall an image of the basic installation package. So that makes it work like a kiosk. And libraries function in much the same way, and that is you go in, you get use of a machine, you do whatever it is you're wanting to do on the machine. When you log off, it wipes out the image you were using, puts in the baseline package, making it this immutable style of logic. And that way, nobody screws up the computer for the next person coming along that wants to use a computer. And another place for a kiosk is like a shopping mall, an airport, where you can get information and other things, maybe even set up for a rental car or a hotel room because you didn't do it before you left wherever you came from. Those are kiosk type situations. And basically a kiosk is limiting what anybody can use the machine for, what they can run, what they can't run. And so it's not a general purpose computer like we're all used to using, regardless of whether it's Windows, Mac, or a Linux.
Yeah, so the long and short of it is you're probably going to want to have Linux Mint Cinnamon, or if you're, like me and just don't want to have anything to do with Canonical, Linux Mint Debian Edition would probably function just about the same for you.
I've always, when I've played with it, I haven't noticed that much difference. I have noticed a few little odds and ends, nothing that I can't live with.
Right.
But you're 100% on Canonical. It's locking down things. I don't like them. When it first got the upgrade, it would only allow me to install snaps. And there are snaps for what I'm doing that work just fine. And well, if the snap works, it's not that the operating system is having an issue, but somehow I cannot install the downloaded file and get it to run. And that's a showstopper for me. I want my system. I want to install what I want to, not as a snap, not as a Flatpak. I want it to be traditional.
Well, Canonical is looking at the same picture that, in a matter of speaking, Microsoft and Apple are looking at, and that is higher security. When you have something like Ubuntu is attempting to do, and you don't like it, that means you're having to go to a different distro, but that also means you're responsible for any and all the security.
And that's the responsibility I'm willing to accept. You know, once again, my system, you know.
Well, there are people who will 100% agree with you, and other people who, for example, me, I'm into hardware, the operating system, and utilities to keep them backed up and running well, versus an application user. Dennis and you, Jeff, are probably more application users, and you just want to be able to load and run the software you want to use, and that's it. You don't get much into the OS utilities for that, and even less into hardware. But if you don't have running hardware, you don't even have a computer. If you don't have a decent operating system, it doesn't matter how good the hardware is, you're going to find it a pain in the butt, like early PCs, having a floppy disk and DOS as your operating system, and that's all. And you have to remember all the commands and options and stuff like that, or have a cheat sheet of some kind for what you use at the most. So you have to have that. And if you don't have utilities, eventually one day, it'll even Linux will tell you, you may be running out of space. Disk space is low. Well, that's because it keeps accumulating log files, temporary files, and other things like that. You have to have cleanup utilities, like we use CCleaner or something like that. Well, you've got BleachBit, which also works on Windows. You got Stacer that works on Linux. And the way I look at it, on some distros of Linux, they only give you one version instead of two versions. The ones with two versions, you have the user version and you have the admin version, or root. Whereas on the single, it's usually just the user's level, and it may or may not work for taking and cleaning out the root garbage that is accumulating out there. And that's usually where you run into the problem the most. It's not on the user side.
Jeff, you were talking about Ubuntu 2404. The Software Center only wants to install snaps, and Software Install doesn't like to install the traditional packages.
Yep.
What you need to do, and you can still do this in 2404, download 2 other package managers, one of which is GDebi. That's an installer.
Yes.
And that will still work. And you can use that on any deb packages you get from here and there. But if you want something more organized and more curated, you can still use the Synaptic Package Manager itself. And it will let you know what dependencies it needs most of the time.
I've downloaded both of those. GDebi did install it, but again, I didn't get the run thing. And research was that GDebi doesn't check for dependencies. It just installs what you've got.
GDebi does check for dependencies, but it won't catch everything.
Okay, then I didn't know.
See,
Semantic, I downloaded it, but I don't quite know how to use it yet. It's been great I figured out how to uninstall files using Semantic, but I haven't got all the nuances of it yet.
Always make sure on Synaptics, when you bring it up, the initial screen, do a reload.
Yeah.
That way it knows exactly what you do have installed on your system before you do a search to find a specific package and its dependencies.
Okay, so bring up Semantic, do a reload, then do a search.
Yes.
Yeah, always reload it the same way you would in Mint. basically the package manager in Mint is it's a simplified form of Synaptic, and it is loading from there.
That's
and
right.
However, if you have both the Mint package manager and Synaptic, the Mint package manager will not update your Synaptic. You'll have to refresh it separately. At least you can't rely on it.
And see, another thing is, like Dennis brought up, he noticed that he has one package ready to be updated.
Yeah.
And I said, if the system just brought that up to your attention, you can go ahead and click on the shield, click install, and it'll be done. But if it's been running a while, like in this meeting, the first thing I would do is click on the shield, hit the refresh first, then do the install.
Yeah.
You bring up the shield. Just give me the
that's a standard software installer updater.
Okay.
And the shield down on the sys tray, and it's got a little red dot, and it's a half white and half black shield. But anyway, when it comes up, if it just came on your sys tray because you just recently started the system, you can probably just click on install. It's done. But if your system's been running a while and then you notice that, oh, I've got at least one update or more, I click on the shield. I will do a refresh first because I have had many a time where it found additional packages. That way I'm doing one install, not doing one install, then maybe hitting refresh or getting that icon back down there again and having to do a second install.
Yeah, when you do the install in the updater, it will then do a refresh at the end. And then it'll come up with more stuff very often.
Yes, and that's what you're trying to avoid is if you've been running a little while, I would hit the refresh first, then do the install one time.
Yeah. But the point is there are several different ways you can get packages. And if it's one package you want to install, check it out online. See what its dependencies are. There are places that list the dependencies. And you may not have all of them.
And I miss the days, of app. App works fine for me, Update, auto remove, boom, done, no problem.
Well, it's still available in the command line.
But it doesn't work. It won't find the dev file.
Yeah, in Ubuntu, apt will go for the snaps. That's the other thing that Canonical did to Ubuntu, which caused me not to like it.
And I can agree with that. After a decade of using Ubuntu, and that's why I found today's video. It's very enlightening because if I'm going to move, it will be to Mint. The video showed me it will do what I wanted to do, and that's important.
Right, and that's true of almost all users, whether you're an application-only user or you're kind of techie like I am. You always want to have the flexibility of doing either what I know or something I have just found out about, whatever the source may be, that interests me and I want to pursue it. I'm not locked down. And you might be in the Ubuntu. I used to play with Ubuntu some, but I haven't played with Ubuntu now for anywhere between 1 and 2 years.
Well, let me give you a little background on how this came up on me. I lost a hard drive. And, okay, it happened. Replaced the hard drive, went to download Ubuntu, get the latest one. Oh, they've come out with a new version. Okay, put it in. Totally expected it to work like the older version. Totally blindsided. Totally have spent hours on this. Don't like Canonical.
Well, are you still using a spinning hard drive?
Not anymore.
Oh, heck, I started in 2012 or 13 with SSDs, one at a time on my multitude of machines and that. And I still use a few spinning hard drives, but nothing critical. And I usually use them for data only, archiving stuff.
And this is on a system, you're very right. It's an older system, has the spinning hard drive, using it for folding at home, so it's on all the time. It's doing the distributed computing project, and it died, you know.
It's going to
served a
happen.
good life.
Well, I mean, so far they think SSDs have roughly at least twice the life of most spinning hard drives, but it depends upon the electricity where you live and voltage spikes and outages. It also depends on how you treat your machine, whether you really take good care of it, check the smart status at least once a month, and see if problems are developing. So it's I've got some drives that are probably 15 years old, spinning hard drives, and they're still working. What can I tell you? And I've had some machines, some spinning hard drives that didn't even last 1 year.
Yeah, that brings the question on maintenance now. I heard from Steve Gibson, he's coming out with a new version of SpinRite, and people tell me that SpinRite does actually help with SSD. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Anybody have any input on that? Does anybody use SpinRite anymore?
SpinRite, I remember the product. It really was designed for a spinning hard drive, but for most part does not make sense on SSDs, because when you delete a file, like in Windows, it's still there. When you do a defragmentation, especially with optimization, it moves things around. So some of the files that were deleted, that space is reused. In other cases, one of the files might still be there intact or partially intact. And on an SSD, it except for I think the first few years, you had to do a manual trim. Anymore, it's an automatic thing that it will periodically do a trim for you. And a trim says anything that's marked for deletion, bye-bye, it's now free space. Use it to your heart's content.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wondered what a trim was. Thank you.
Trim is basically garbage collection, and the algorithms vary from one particular model to another, and sometimes they get firmware updates that improve it. And also, trim can be done from within the operating system. Windows does it every 2 weeks. Linux can be set up to do it every 2 weeks, but Linux by default doesn't know how to do it. And you may have to teach it how to do it, and that gets into doing a lot of file editing as root.
Yeah.
So I have set up trim for external enclosures, and boy, is that a pain, but it does make a difference in how they function. And with the external enclosures, I have to manually invoke it through the command line. But once I learned how to do it, it's a pretty easy thing to do. I just have to keep checking that it's working.
One thing I've noticed...
You're using an SSD and an external enclosure?
Yeah, I have them in external enclosures so that I can boot Linux and still keep Windows on my internal drive. And so I don't have to have 1,000,001 different PCs.
Oh.
Yeah,
now that sounds like a good idea.
Well, that's better than the traditional dual boot, which is one drive, 2 OSs at least. And it also is better, I think, than having a Windows disk and a Linux disk, because if, say, you have a voltage spike from after an outage, you may lose both drives.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's an external housing drive, I have some that are that way, and I have some that I do like this. This is a drive down here with my little finger, and this is a USB to SATA adapter. It's kind of like having a whole enclosure with its own cable, and I can boot up anything off of any computer. The only issue that comes into play is under Windows, it wants you to be in secure boot, okay? Only some of the Linuxes, but more and more constantly are adding UEFI support so that they will work in conjunction with Windows. The problem is, and I've played with 3 recently, Mint, KDE Neon, and Manjaro, and all 3 of them handle UEFI differently in getting it set up. And the Manjaro one, I have not been able to put it into a machine that has secure boot set and have it also work by booting off of it. It just ignores it and goes right into the internal drive. Whereas with Mint and KDE Neon, those I have been able to get to work, but it's not the same exact setup on the 2 versions. So you run into that issue. And as you go further and further into the UEFI and so forth, there's a lot of people. I've got one person, that's why I have the KDE Neon that I'm trying to help out. If he goes to his son's place, it's a Windows-only secure boot system. He and neither his son know how to go into the BIOS, temporarily change it to legacy mode, boot up off of his external drive that he brought with him, do what he wants to do, and then set the BIOS settings back to the way they normally would be. And that's the way we used to have to do it, and there are still lots of versions of Linux out there that have to work the same exact way.
Yeah, you can run into some fun stuff when you start using enclosures.
Yeah. But I mean, the ones I was working with and testing with were not on the enclosure. They were on the drive with the USB adapter. And also, I did it in-house. In other words, I took out the Windows drive, I put in that blank drive, and I installed the OSs natively inside the one drive to support the UEFI. And they still had different ways of doing it, and the Manjaro still wouldn't boot until I took off secure boot. Then it booted up. Even though it's still set up as UEFI.
So, Jeff, it's not all fun and games.
No, it can be a headache at times, but the other key that you got to remember, there's a lot of people that don't like AI, but I use AI quite a bit for troubleshooting. And I have recently had one machine, it's the first time I've had it too. This damn thing would never go to sleep. Some people had that same kind of problem. Some people had the opposite. It would go to sleep and never wake up. So, in other words, once it went to sleep, moving the mouse or clicking the mouse or clicking any key on the keyboard did absolutely nothing. All you could do was press the power button to have it shut it down, and then you started troubleshooting, trying to figure out what it was. I found out what it was. In the BIOS, it had in the power settings, the S0 and S3 I think it had support for 4 and 5, but I didn't. That wasn't activated, and I didn't activate it. But between S0 and S3, it had 2 different modes. One had one mode, the other S3 had a different mode, and they were conflicting. So that's why it would go to sleep and never wake up. And when I discovered this in the BIOS, and I set them both to exactly the same mode of sleep, all the problems disappeared. But even using the AI didn't point that one out. I discovered it all by myself because nothing else was working, and I had to scrutinize everything in the BIOS to finally spot that one thing. Made a change, problem solved.
And, you know, every computer has its own little idiosyncrasy.
Oh yes,
Computer,
even from the same manufacturer, you don't always get the exact same BIOS. I've had dealt with a traditional, what I call menu selection of BIOS settings, and I've had what I call traditional BIOS screens that most of the other computers and manufacturers use. And so I've seen both on Dell. It depends upon a model line as to what BIOS they happen to use.
And on the Dell, I discovered, like the traditional, you've got pretty much open, you can make the changes you want.
Right.
Dell gives you a list, and that's all you get. And I've never figured out a way to get around it to get to the real BIOS.
Oh, there isn't. That list, is their way of doing it, and you expand each section that you want to get to the individual things under that to make your individual changes. But the general always opens up at the top with about 5 or 6 categories underneath it. And there, you'll see a plus sign in a square. When you click on that, it expands it, and you see the drop down of all the settings under each of the other categories. That's the way it works, and it's a lot better, a lot smarter, and easier to understand than the traditional BIOS because they all are different. All your F keys on getting into the BIOS, getting into a boot menu, things like that, they're all different. There's no standardization. There never was.
But it says on the screen, on traditional BIOS, it will tell you what is, you know, somewhere on the screen. But you're right, they are all different. But they've got everything there with just the list. That's all you get.
I've had some that are very detailed, give you lots of options, like a traditional Dell menu style. Not in that style, but the number of options. And I've had some that had so few options, it was frustrating because I couldn't make certain changes I like to have on my machine. All right. Well, I think we better quit while we're ahead. But it was a good meeting. I'm not sure what I'll be doing next month. I usually don't start playing with that until another week or two before I start looking at some of the Linux stuff.
Yeah, and it's good to have.
In a month, if you started playing with it now, there might be new things that would be important for the meeting 2 weeks down the road.
Yeah. It is good to see some people starting to use Linux who hadn't yet.
Well,
especially you, Dennis. Good to have you on board.
Well, Earl was in here. He was one of the 2 people I was looking for. I was pretty certain Dennis would be here. Jim Kincaid, I haven't heard from him for a while. Yeah. I don't know what he's doing for sure. Earl was in here. He's one that I've got to help with the KDE Neon.
Oh.
And when we first set it up, I had never messed with it before. And we tried to set up KDE's UEFI. It never worked out. Well, now I played with it on one of my machines as a temporary OS, and I now know how to set it up, and it's different than on Mint, and it's different on Manjaro. And I mean, Jiminy Christmas.
Yeah. Well, this happens when you've got a lot of different distros running around.
Well, that's true, and there's a lot of old ones, and some people use old distros. They think they're okay, they're safe, and that may or may not be true because there are constantly security patches, just like in Mac OS and in Windows. So, are you really safer with an old one? I don't know.
Eventually, you get to the point where there's something in the kernel that cannot be patched adequately.
Yeah, and but they'll, as long as that version still does everything the person wants, they don't care. It's like the people that are still on Windows XP or Windows 7, even possibly Windows 8.
8.1.
So, basically speaking, if you you have to think of it like going to see a financial advisor. Every one of them will try and ask you questions to assess your risk tolerance. The less risky investments you want, you're very conservative. You're almost all cash, CDs, not even certain about bonds, okay, and no stocks. And then you have the people who throw caution to the wind, and they don't care if they lose their shirt until you get something like the 1929 stock market crash, and so many people committed suicide. Whatever.
You got to find what's comfortable for you. And Dennis, did I hear you say that you got your first boot tonight under Linux?
No, he's
for the first time.
He used to be in.
Well, I actually booted it up yesterday, and after I booted it up, the first thing I did was click on LibreOffice to see if it would pop up. It popped right up. I was happy. I played around with that a little bit, closed that, and then I just opened up one or two applications, and then I just closed it down. And then I needed to get everything set up for today so I could use this little camera to shine on it. So, but yeah, basically, it's the first time I used it, was yesterday and today.
Didn't that feel good when after you've loaded it and you've made all the changes and then you boot it for the first time and it actually comes up and you've got a list?
Yeah.
Well, Jeff,
congratulations.
Jeff,
it was very,
Dennis was in the group before. Then he had to have some knee surgery and was out for a long time, and now he's back again.
Well, welcome back.
Oh, thanks. Thanks.
All right. If there's nothing else, we'll call it a night.
Yeah.
It's way past my bedtime. Of course, my bedtime was back 5 minutes after I got out of bed. All right. We'll call it